In today's show, we're talking a real-life Anfernee Simons trade rumor, plus lessons learned from the first round of the playoffs. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. As Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, you're listening to Monday, May 5th show. We made it. It's May, and we got a real deal off-season trade rumor. As far as I can tell, the first time this rumor that has been very hot in Blazers land has actually made anything that you would call like official reporting world. We'll talk about that and Anfernee Simons and the city. Beautiful in the first segment. And then I want to talk about some things that we've learned from the first round of the playoffs. I just watched the first round of the playoffs wrap up. The Golden State Warriors advancing, some stuff we can learn, maybe not specifically from the Warriors, but some larger trends. And obviously I watched the Nuggets absolutely wax the Clippers on Saturday evening as well, and two kind of boring-ish game sevens, but I think there's some stuff that I've learned watching this first round of the playoffs that are helpful when thinking about as the Blazers move forward, and they want to be one of these teams that competes at this level. And we'll talk about the lessons learned, a couple from those two, not from those two games, but from the first round as a whole. But let's get into the news of news. According to Jake Fisher, who reported this on Sunday, May 4th for the Stein Line, that's Mark Stein's Substack, where Jake Fisher writes that it was a larger piece about various, emptying the notebook on various rumblings heard around the league, but it included the following. I'm going to read it verbatim here. As a new offseason Beckham's, another Trailblazer has been increasingly projected as an Orlando target. Lillard's former Blazer backcourt mate, Anfernee Simons. The 25-year-old is an Orlando native who would certainly blend in nicely from a timeline perspective alongside Paolo Banchero, 22, and Franz Wagner, 23. Wait, Anfernee Simons to Orlando? Haven't we been talking about this for 2 years? We have, dear listener, we have. It has been the obvious thing. But as far as I can tell, this is the first time that it's been like in any type of reporting that like substantiates it as having real interest from the parties involved has popped up. I know this has been a thing that we've talked about here on the show. I've talked about it. I've done crossover episodes with Phil over at Locked On Magic, and we've talked about it. I know that he and the listener base over there at Locked On Magic, they have discussed it. Obviously, Ant is like an Orlando native, which people kind of like to do that. That's why people think the Blazers need Peyton Pritchard or whatever. It's been a thing that has mostly been talked about by fans and podcasters and like people who have access to Trade Machine and see the Orlando Magic's obvious needs. But I'm not sure that anyone's ever reported real interest in this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I can tell and from, I've covered this pretty closely over the years, this is the first time anyone's ever reported like Orlando is actually interested in this, because I think prior it was like, Mike Richmond, the podcaster, thinks this is a good idea, but not any like real interest here. And obviously, Jake Fisher is not reporting like this is a done deal or whatever. But this is the first time that this, I would say that this has elevated itself to actual rumor status, as opposed to just like, here's a trade idea that would work, and everyone agrees that's a good idea. It would work. So what would it look like? I know you're asking. First of all, it obviously makes sense because for a variety of reasons. Let me talk about why it makes sense first, and then we'll get into actual package. The Warriors. I got Warriors in the brain. The Orlando Magic cover for Anfernee Simons' specific flaws, and Anfernee Simons provides the exact skill set that they need. They need someone who can really shoot, and particularly shooting off the dribble, a little bit of half-court ability to score in the half-court, either as a spot-up guy, where Ant has been very, very, very good, or as a guy who can score off the dribble, where Ant has been kind of up and down, but sometimes excellent. And I would say like the context in Portland is a little bit different than the context he'd be playing in with Orlando. And the context is what I really want to, like, why I really think the fit has value. Paolo Banchero gets to do initiator, point guardy stuff. Franz Wagner gets to do initiator, point guardy stuff. When Jalen Suggs is healthy next year, he'll get some on-ball reps to be maybe not like the lead guard because he's more of an off guard guy, but he still runs pick and rolls for them to be sure. Like I would say before the injury and the last year and a half, he's like trending that way for sure as like someone who runs pick and rolls. So they don't need Anfernee Simons to be a lead point guard type of lead initiator. He can be mostly off the ball. That's huge. And they're really good on defense and really, really big and really physical. And Simons showed during at least the second half of this season that like he can be competitive on defense. He's still going to be the obvious weak link, but he can make his flaws just sort of like talent and anticipation and strength as opposed to like interest. You crank the interest level up, and then it's just about like, sometimes you're just going to get bullied. Sometimes you're going to be slow to react. But that's but like I don't think Anfernee Simons' problem said the second half of this year was that he played like scared or not hard enough. He just isn't. He's a bad defensive player, and he's always going to be that way probably. But they are an elite defensive team that can cover up his needs and need what he looks. They need his strengths on offense, shooting, and then some playmaking, and at least, and particularly some sort of just like ability to create your own shot, which is Anfernee Simons' actual skill in the league, and the long range and the long distance shooting, which at times he's been an elite long range shooter. I think this year he was not quite that. So what would it look like? What would it look like? That's what you're screaming. You love fake trades. It's fake trade season. You listen to a podcast about the Portland Trailblazers in May, you're dying for me to cook something up in the trade machine, so I did. I did because I love y'all. I really do. Thanks for letting me do this in early May. The dream deal looks something like this. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, actually, your dream deal, dear listener, is absolutely outrageous, and I hate it. Don't email it to me. But I think within realistic parameters, the dream deal looks something like this. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Anthony Black, and Denver's first-round pick this year. That's the 25th pick in the draft in 2025. KCP is basically the money to make it work, but also is like he had a down season this season, and he's owed, making north of $20 million, and like, if age is catching up with him, et cetera, or whatever it might be, he's a good defensive player still. He just kind of, the offense didn't come around the way it had. The shooting did not come around the way it had in Orlando as it had in previous stops. But like KCP can come off the bench to be a really useful part for the Blazers. Anthony Black is a really interesting 6'7". He's probably not a 1. It's pretty obvious he's not a point guard. But like two guard with some size to guard multiple positions. I'd be really intrigued by him. He seems very Blazery to me. Shooting was better this season than it had been, but you wouldn't call him a shooter by any means. And then a first-round pick for Anfernee Simons. That would be a heck of a haul. You get KCP, AB, and a first for Ant. Cash it in. Run to the phone to submit it. You can cook up other versions of this. I think an okay version of this would be you still get the pick, but you don't get they don't want to trade Anthony Black. So you get Gary Harris. You get 2 veterans. It's the Blazers are likely to need guard depth because obviously going to trade away Anfernee Simons in this deal, and I would imagine Delano Banton is not on the team next year based on his contract being up, him entering free agency. I wouldn't love that one as much, but I think like if you trade Anfernee Simons, you're thinking about the future, and a first round pick helps you place your vision on the future while getting some veterans that can help in the now. You can cook up other versions of this, and some of you will, and I'll ignore them when they come to my inbox because I've already talked about it. Jonathan Isaac could be involved. Cole Anthony could be involved. I think there's a world where you can cook up some version very similar to the one I just proposed that Wendell Carter is involved. I don't love Jonathan Isaac on the Blazers because I already think they have their team isn't screaming for like more defensive specialist non-shooters. Isaac is a great defensive player though. Cole Anthony, listen, he did go to the right college. I'm glad he spent 8 months in Chapel Hill. I want to say this quietly, so some of my friends who know me don't hear, but he's not very good. He's bad. He seems like a really fun personality, but he's not very good. I wouldn't be that excited about Cole Anthony coming to the Blazers. I mean, I would, because go Tar Heels, but like, I'm going to keep it a buck. He's just not that good. And Wendell Carter, even though he did go to the wrong school, he's fine. He's like an average, slightly below average probably for me, below average starting center in the league. Like, he's fine. Yeah, I would, I wouldn't be upset. Like, I wouldn't be like, why'd they do it if they have Isaac or Anthony or Carter in there, but those are not my preferred targets. But I think the most important part here is that this actually has legs. This isn't like something that I cooked up with Phil from Locked On Magic. Like, I don't know if it has legs. This has real reporting behind it to say the Magic are thought to be a team that could be interested in Anfernee Simons, from a reporter who breaks news and Jake Fisher. This isn't some trade machine post on Reddit. This is not, like an AI generated article on a formerly respected news magazine website. This is real. Like, this has some real interest, real reporting backing it. So I'd say for the first time, you could say that the Simons to Orlando stuff is a real rumor. Will it happen? I don't know. And do you like any of these trades? You probably don't, because you want to just trade them for Franz. We'll see. I think one of the challenges that the Blazers will face, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, is like, if they trade Anfernee Simons, the thing that they're bad at already, shooting, is likely to get worse. And I think that's something they will have to balance. That is something they will have to face and balance and deal with and maybe just like live with, quite frankly, if that's the move that they make. Because when you are one of the worst shooting teams in the league and you trade your best shooter, that probably doesn't bode well for like improving your shooting. Let's talk playoffs, though. I think the Blazers are in some ways built for the type of playoff basketball we have seen. It's just whether they can qualify to start playing the style that we have increasingly watched in these playoffs. Join me in the second segment. We'll talk about physicality and the Portland Trail Blazers. First, though, I want to tell you that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. The world has made a lot of progress when it comes to mental health, but there's still a long way to go. Too many people still avoid therapy because they're afraid of being judged. But the truth is, taking care of your mental health should be just as normal as going to the gym or eating healthy. And this is Mental Health Awareness Month. Let's normalize getting help and encourage everyone to prioritize their well-being, because when people feel supported, families, workplaces, and entire communities are better for it. And listen, therapy can be incredibly valuable if you are dealing with a major acute trauma in your life, but it's not just about dealing with the big problems. It's about maintaining your mental wellness, just like you do with your physical health, just like you do by eating healthy. And with BetterHelp, getting started is easier than ever. It's fully online, has a network of over 30,000 licensed therapists, so you can switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. We're all better with help. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right. So I watched the playoffs this weekend. I've been watching them all week, but I watched them all weekend. We got 2 Game 7s. Watched them with some friends. The first one was a super dud. I actually thought Warriors Rockets was pretty entertaining, but the Rockets didn't have the juice. They didn't to make it competitive down the stretch. The Clippers, they went out like the Clippers sometimes do, which is super extra sad. Like, wait, why? Maybe they shouldn't have been here. And then when teams lose in the playoffs, particularly when they lose bad, and particularly when older teams lose bad, and I think it's happened to both LA teams. And Luka's not old, but like LeBron is. But the Clippers are old. They're older. Like, they just like don't really have young players that are. They don't really have prospects, right? They don't have like someone who's going to like be part of what's next, who's like a young player. You start to be like, did we just watch this team bump up against their ceiling, and they'll never get above this stage. It does sometimes feel like that in playoffs. They feel very final. They feel very like sometimes you just lose. The Clippers lost. They went out sad though. But I felt like watching that game, and I felt like watching that series is the same thing I felt like watching Warriors Rockets on Sunday night, and to some extent, it's what I felt like watching Knicks Pistons. It has been a theme of the playoffs. They're like unrecognizable if you were just to pick a game up in, say, late April versus the middle of November. They're just letting them play to a level of physicality that is just not available to you when you watch a regular season game. Personally, I find this version of basketball more fun. I find it more fun when there's more physicality. I do think it's probably bad that the NBA has two different rule books, one for the games that we think don't mean as much and one for the games that we think define everything about a player's legacy and talent level, and whether we put them in the category of trash or whether we put them in the category of GOAT, because there's only two categories, as you know. I think it's probably bad that the rule book changes, but I do enjoy this version of the rule book. I really do. I enjoy... particularly like where I've seen the physicality really show up and it just like, and where the rules maybe just like don't exist. Drives to the rim. You could be so handsy once a guy gets below the foul line, it seems like. If a guy is driving hard to the rim and doesn't have a clean drive and like you're hip to hip with him, you can put your hands on him. You can contest, chest to chest more. You can just, there's just a level of physicality, particularly on attacks toward the rim there are fouls every time in the regular season. And in the post, jockeying for position, and once a post player catches it, go watch when Nikola Jokic gets a switch. If they guard Nikola Jokic with a small guy, that small dude is allowed to do any type of violence. Nicholas Batum, Chris Dunn, they're allowed to do any level of violence that is below the shoulders to Nikola Jokic, and they don't call it. They're physical with him, right? And he's physical right back. He's throwing Batum off with his off arm. Like it's a fun little battle. I thought even like when Zubats, he doesn't get a lot of direct post-ups, but when he did a handful of times, they were physical with him when he got a switch. I thought Aaron Gordon was allowed to be super physical with Kawhi during the series. I thought the Knicks, when they played their best games, is when the wings, when Bridges and Anunoby turned up their physicality on the perimeter. I thought that was the best version of the Knicks in this series. A series they could have lost and ended up winning. The Rockets Warriors, like, incredibly physical. Draymond obviously operates outside the rule book, but like, I thought they let him be physical in a way that is, certainly he wouldn't be allowed in the regular season, but it was fun. Like Şengün gets bullied, right? The Şengün, and then he does some bullying right back. It's different. But what it got me thinking about was about the Portland Trail Blazers, because a past era of the Blazers this was not their game, right? This was not the Dame and CJ era. Maybe some players on that team, but I would say like, you were talking general identity of those teams, even the best versions of those teams. They were down to mix it up and maybe like, get into the mud a little bit, but they weren't like tone setting physical, right? Like that wasn't, they set the tone in just different ways. That wasn't the type of team they were. And to some extent on the current team, it's been a knock on certainly DeAndre Ayton over his career that he doesn't play with enough physicality. I think it's been a knock on Anfernee Simons to some extent here and there, that like physicality is the thing that takes him out of the game. Although I think the actual physicality is like, the actual knock on him should be like just a little bit miscast. He's not a lead guy. It's okay. Not everyone is a lead guy. Just a little bit miscast. But for certain, physicality is a problem with Anfernee Simons. I'm kind of being joking a little bit. And Ayton can be physical, but doesn't always play that way. But like Denny Avdija sets the tone with physicality. He's incredibly physical. I think one of Donovan Clingan's best skills is a willingness to be physical. Toumani Camara, incredibly physical. Now, a flopper and a king of kings when it comes to flopping, but like incredibly physical in and of his own. Like at the same time, he's someone who plays with real physicality, and I think that's pretty fun. And not only is it just like fun that the Blazers play that way, like I think that was a mark of them this season, is that they were willing to be physical. But it's not just like an enjoyable brand of basketball. This is the brand of basketball that if you get to the highest levels, you have to be able to play, and it's so much easier to play it as part of your identity than to like put on the costume of, all right, now we're good, now it's the playoffs, and let us show that physicality, let us get in there. Now it's not up and down the Blazers roster. I don't think you could say like every player plays that way, but I would say like even guys who probably aren't going to be like in the playoff rotation the next time Blazers are good. Like Jabari Walker, hard to know his future, but like he's down to be physical. Chris Murray, I think one of his best skills is physicality on defense. Like he doesn't get punked. The offense is a whole other adventure for him, but he does not. He is physical and is tough on that end. I think they have to some extent those dudes. Shaedon Sharpe plays strong. I don't know if like true physicality is his thing because the handle's not quite there. And like I think that could be a challenge for him, but he's not someone who backs down from like contact at the rim. He's really good at absorbing contact. And Scoot Henderson, while I think like really extensive like playoff level pressure defense would probably take him out of his game at this stage in his career, he is built, at least has the physical tools to make you think like, yeah, this could be the way he plays. And if the Blazers establish this identity, this could be a whole thing. I'm not trying to necessarily sell you on the Blazers like being ready for the playoffs, but I do think that they have the parts that high-level basketball seems to be composed of. Guys who are... When the Blazers were at their best this season, they were a defense that was physical and opportunistic and got steals and got out and ran and like, maybe fouled a little bit too much, but fouled too much in the name of playing hard. And I think that is the level, that's the line that you need to be comfortable getting up to right away. And the Blazers already kind of approached that line when they were at their best this season. The other thing I want to talk about to close the show is depth. I think depth is really important, but I think when you get farther along in the playoffs, you kind of see the difference in depth versus, yeah, they got a lot of players. That team's pretty deep versus like that's playoff depth, that's winning depth. That's a team that has enough dudes that could help you win a championship. Join me in the third segment. We'll talk depth and whether the Blazers are building towards that. Join me there, won't you? Before we get there, though, let's talk Monarch Money. It's the app that helps you manage your cash and then manage your savings. So the cash you have now grows into some cash and even more cash that you have in the future. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Not just a budgeting app, although it is a very useful budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, your investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. So it's all in one is a really valuable part about Monarch Money. So instead of having to check your, maybe your mortgage payments in one place and your investment payments and your investments in your 401k and stock markets and stock investments, and your savings account and your regular checking account, like that's all just right there, all right there sitting for you, waiting for you in the app. Plus you can budget for short-term goals and long-term goals, so you can really have full control over everything you want to do with your finances. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use Locked On NBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, the code is Locked On NBA, and that's monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. Still listen to Locked On Blazers. One thing that has struck me watching these playoffs, and I mentioned this in a mailbag episode last week when a listener asked about this, was like, I think there's an idea that it's like depth wins in the playoffs more than it has in the past. The top heavy teams can no longer do it. Yeah, I do think you need some depth, right? Preferably you would have 7 dudes who can hang, and you can use, the 2 bench guys interchangeably as needed to switch up your looks and play a couple different ways. But having depth, I think that really helps the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? They don't beat the Lakers because they just had more and better players. And the Lakers, their weakest link was like they didn't have an NBA center. And then it was very clear by the end of the playoffs, if they did have an NBA center on the bench, the coach wasn't comfortable playing him. That's a problem. But the Wolves could survive Rudy Gobert struggling early in the season and just go with Naz Reid and go with Julius Randle. And then when they Rudy kind of found his form, they closed out the series. He dominated. They win. You win with depth, right? That's key. But I also think you look at a series like Denver, and they were like, we have 6 dudes who can play, and those 6 guys are going to play. We don't have depth, and they beat a team that theoretically in the Clippers has more and better parts, right? The Clippers have more and better players. They don't have the best player, but they have more good ones on the team, and that is okay, well, it might just wear you down because they have more ways to go. But by the end of the series, the the way the Nuggets were guarding them, they were going to make Chris Dunn shoot shots, and Chris Dunn couldn't make enough of those shots he was taking to burn them. So then he was kind of unplayable. So then they started searching for it, and Ty Lue at the end of that series is like trying to figure out, if it could be Derrick Jones Jr. or if it could be Nick Batum, and if it is Nick Batum, how much can you play Nick Batum at his age and mileage, and what he's going to be asked to do, which is guard Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Like, what is like a reasonable workload ask for Nico? And so like they're juggling the fifth starter, they're juggling how to make it work. They've got a guy that was really helpful at one point in this series, but like eventually as it wore on, couldn't hang, and then. And was awesome for them during the regular season. And then all of a sudden, the Clippers are down to like 6 dudes they can play. Depth versus depth. It wasn't what the strength of a deep team that the Clippers had, which got them to 50 wins and was able to push forward without Kawhi during the regular season. When they showed up and played a darn good team in Denver and the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, like, yeah, they didn't have the depth to play. Like, their depth couldn't play. That's the difference in being deep and having depth. They're probably just deep. They've got a lot of players, but it's like, yeah, Bogdanovich never was quite good enough, right? I think if you look over at Rockets Warriors that closed out the weekend, it's like the Rockets have a much deeper team. I don't think that's debatable, really. But when it came down to it, they couldn't get enough out of their dudes. Jalen Green wasn't good enough. They don't have that other type of guy on the court. Like, I thought Tari Eason came and gave him good minutes, but like, how much can you scale up Tari Eason to really help you win like a Game 7 type of game? Really useful, really fun, good role player, about player I really enjoy watching. But like, not the type of depth that can swing a playoff series without high level shooting. I think that's like, if you can't defend or you can't knock down threes, they're going to find you, because this league is becoming increasingly a weakest link type of league. Like, when you get to the playoffs, who's the worst dude on the court on either end? Because we're going to make that dude shoot and we're going to make that dude guard. And shoot, if you're both of those players, sometimes you can't play. But if you're one on either end, you better be money on the other end. You better be really good, because like when you get down to it, like, you're going to want your stars to play somewhere between 40 and 42 minutes in the playoffs. They're going to play a ton, right? Your best players are going to be on the court. That's why you win with stars, right? Because they're going to play. But that's why I think 7 is the sweet spot. 8 would be ideal, but like, you can get away with, if you have 7 guys who can play, you could probably win a championship. It's just, they're not always going to be perfect in whatever matchup you have, et cetera, et cetera. So it helps to have a little bit more. But like, the way you can overwhelm teams in the regular season with depth, you can't do that in the NBA playoffs, because their good players are going to be on the floor more, and they're going to be really, really matchup specific and target what you can't do and make you guard and all of those things. And the Rockets were so damn close to winning this series, quite frankly. And I don't think that necessarily would have changed my take. What my take would have been is like, boy, Fred VanVleet was hooping, and he was really good in games 5 and 6, and he wasn't as good in 7. And Jalen Green just never made shots after game 2, and that's kind of it. The Rockets are a really deep team. They got a bunch of players that can help. You win games. I wouldn't be surprised if they do nothing. They're probably going to do something, right? They're the team that everyone thinks is going to make the big splash, but if they do nothing, like, they won 52 games this year. They're good enough to do that almost exactly again next season, assuming that Steady Freddy is back in the building. So how does this pertain to the Blazers? I don't think the Blazers can worry about depth too much until you're in the mix. Like, if the concern is like the best problem you can have when you're a team like the Blazers is to get to the level of of those Clippers and of those Rockets teams that are like, yeah, we got 12 dudes who can play every night in an NBA game, and we might be able to rip off somewhere between 48 and 52 wins. But if we get to the playoffs, we might not have the risers to get us further. I think for Portland, it's checking the regular season depth box. The Blazers don't have a lot of depth right now. They have they have 8-ish like players that would play for everybody. But they don't have like high end talent. They don't. It's like I don't like the ranking stuff. But it's like I don't know. Like, where do you think Denny ranks? Whatever Denny ranks, they don't have they don't have enough dudes in that rank. Like, I think the Ringer has Denny at like in the 40s. So like, let's say Denny is a top 50 player. Do the Blazers have do they have two more top 100 players? I don't think so. And it's like, so they don't have that depth to get to the regular season level. The first box, and that's what they'll do this summer, is try to retool and either sort of have forward-looking things where it's like, we're going to have this depth in 2026, 2027, or it's like they're going to try to build to that level of like, okay, we got 10 dudes who can play. We feel like we can withstand some injuries. We feel like it's like to make the playoffs in the Western Conference, you probably got to win 46 games at a minimum, and maybe more. The Warriors were in the play-in tournament with 48 wins. Like you got to be a good basketball team. So if you're not able to acquire top end talent, which I don't think the Blazers will be able to do this summer, acquiring enough, 10 good NBA rotation players to kind of cook you through the regular season with various ingredients, that's step one. And then you get to the playoffs and you get the realization what's depth and what's a deep team. That's going to do it for today's program. I have really fun shows lined up the rest of the week. Rafael Barlow is going to be back on the program. Let's go, unless it falls through. But now I've already teased it, so Raf's going to make it happen. I've been trying. Me and him have just our lives are busy. We have not been able to coordinate. But Raf's going to be back. We're going to talk draft stuff, and then I think I think I'm going to have the most prestigious interview in the history of Locked On Blazers later this week. That's all I'm going to say. Come back for that one. You will not see it coming. But you heard about it. So tell your friends about the program. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. Also on YouTube. Last week before the draft lottery is finalized. Going to be good stuff. Come hang. Tell your friends. You're listening to a Blazers podcast in May. Tell your Blazers people that there's a Blazers podcast that goes on in May, and they do 5 days a week wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.